Welcome to Authors Revealed. I'm Becky Anderson. One of my all-time favorite children's authors is here. It's Bruce Coville and his new book of the Enchanted Files. It's called Diary of a Mad Brownie. You're gonna love this one. Well, Bruce, welcome back to Anderson's in Naperville.
Thank you.
It is so great to have you here. I want to tell you this new book, which is the start of a new series, is absolutely brilliant. It is, oh my gosh, I laughed out loud, and I love the way, which we'll talk a little bit in our conversation about how you put this novel together. But tell us, since the book's been out since what?
June.
June. Mm-hmm. So this book is the start of a new series, but I think it has a little different way you tell this story. So tell us a little bit, where did the seed start to grow to start the Enchanted Files?
Okay, the very earliest seed for this was actually a short story that I wrote about 20 years ago called Clean as a Whistle.
Okay.
And it had the same setup. There's this kind of OCD Scottish brownie and an incredibly messy girl. And the interaction between the two, which is sort of the odd couple with a 12-year-old slob and 150-year-old Tony Randall, was so much fun. I wanted to go back and revisit them.
Right.
And I was trying to outline it. You know, the short story was all about the interaction between the two of them, but to turn into a novel, I needed a plot.
Sure.
And I was trying to work on that, and I honestly, I've gone through my records. I don't know where the idea of supporting documents came from, but one day
well, that's in the subtitle, with supporting documents, which is so cool. Yeah.
And one day it was just there, and the whole book came to life when I came up with that concept.
Yeah.
So let Angus tell the diary first person.
Sure.
I love writing first person. You know, I've written first person, I've written female first person, I've written first person dragon, I've written first person alien, right. And so writing first person brownie was fun.
Well, I think he is a exceptional character because he's 150 years old and he's Scottish, so he has that, and that's what was great about the book. Telling it in first person, he has that Scottish brogue.
And he's a bit of a pepper pot too.
Oh, okay.
So when he loses his temper, it's nasty.
Very nice. See, now that's perfect. That's wonderful. My daughter goes to the University of St. Andrews, so she. Oh, yes. So
you know that Scots burrs is quite a bit harder to do than Irish.
Oh, it is. It is a lot harder to do than an Irish accent for sure. But you put that into his diary, so it's just brilliant. And what I loved about the book, besides being so audible, which I think you probably read some of this stuff aloud. It's great to read aloud, but it's so visual too, and it's just really good. So I want to know. You added a lot more, saying this was a short story originally 20 years ago, but you've added so much more because we have the Queen of the Shadows, or maybe she's the Queen of the Fairies, whatever we want to call her, right?
And she sort of fills that role to some extent.
Right. But there's a curse. So tell us a little bit about the curse. We don't want to do too many spoilers because we want, I think adults should read this too because they'd love it, but we don't want to give it away for kids. So tell us a little bit about the curse.
I will tell a little bit about the curse.
Okay.
First, it was a gift from the gods of comedy. I needed a name for the family, for the girl's family. She has lost track of her Scottish background, but the curse extends back to her family. Yeah. And I was looking for the funniest Scots surname. And I decided McGonagall, because it's so guttural.
Oh, yeah.
It's the funniest of the Scots
it's like Professor McGonagall.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, from Harry Potter.
So then I thought, exactly. I thought, I know that because it's in the Harry Potter books. Right. Did J.K. make that up, or is it a real Scots surname? So then I started I'd done it before, but I researched that specific surname. Okay. Not only is it a real Scots surname, William McGonagall is widely recognized as being the worst poet in the history of the English language.
Oh, so hence the poetry, the curse with the
poetry. I found that and I thought, I am so happy. I looked up some of his poetry, which is just wretchedly banal.
Okay.
And I mentioned it to Jane Yolen, who lives half-time in St. Andrews.
Yes, she does, yes.
And she said, oh, yes, most families keep a copy of McGonagall's poetry to read out loud at family events to see how long they can go without laughing. If you want to know what bad poetry is like, read the Tay Bridge Disaster.
Okay.
Based on a real railroad accident. So the curse is that when Angus comes to the home, it was placed on his father, but now it's gone on to him. The males in the house are seized with a passionate desire to write poetry, which they're completely incapable of writing. So they write this wretched poetry. And I had so much fun because I would write really wretched poems and bring them down to read to my wife. Who would go, don't put that noise. Oh yeah, it's going right in.
Oh my God, that's so great. So this curse, so and also too they recite their poetry, which makes it so much more fun. But it's the 300-year-old curse. So basically, the Brownie, and he is his previous mistress, I guess, has passed away, and now he has to come across the Atlantic to find.
And he's like the typhoid Mary of bad poetry.
But it affects the males in the family, so interesting. But I love the fact that you have this 300-year-old curse. You have a curse with bad poetry, and you have an OCD Brownie. There's just so many elements that make this so fun, and so many of your books, you add so much humor to them, and I think that's why kids just absolutely adore your books, and you do series so well. But it's hard to balance that humor and story and plot and all that. Is it a difficult task for you to balance all that?
It sort of comes naturally to me.
Okay.
I did not start out thinking I was going to be a funny writer. Originally I was trying to beat the next Edgar Rice Burroughs because I love John Carter of Mars so much.
Okay.
And then I realized very early on, like when I was, even when I was 18 or 19, I was trying to write kids' books. Mm-hmm. And I was trying to write serious things, but I have this kind of loose wire. And so when I get in trouble, I wisecrack. And the humor sort of flowed in naturally. And I began to get a reputation as a humorous writer. I thought, well, let's go with the strength here. So
yeah, but you write in so many different genres. Whether it's science fiction or whether it's fantasy or whatever. And there's always humor. But I loved your Shakespeare series, those picture books that were so fabulous.
I loved
those. Wish you would do more of those. I love those. But I just think you do this so well. It seems like it would be a difficult task. I just don't.
There are times when it's very difficult.
Right.
Yeah, the humor, I think, is actually the stuff that comes most naturally to me. What held me up most on Matt Brownie was working out the details of the plot.
Okay.
And then it's sort of a lot of that happens in the underbrain, in the subconscious mind. And Jane Yolen is a very good friend of mine, and we wrote a book together once. And I was collaborating on a novel with another author up there in her area. So I was staying at Jane's house, and there's something magical about her place. I used to refer to it as Rivendell, because it's this big old farmhouse that goes on and on. There's always artists and writers and songs going on there. And now the kids who moved out, I was staying in one of her son's rooms. And the last 50 pages of the book came to me in the week that I was there.
Oh, wow.
There's something about that place, I'll tell you.
Yeah. Well, Jane was at the same conference. You're just at the Illinois Reading Council, and Jane was there. And just hearing her talk and just read some of her poetry, so I can understand how the magic happens there, because I know Heidi, their daughter, lives right next door. So
right.
I look at it as a compound where a lot of the magic happens with what they do.
And actually, I gave a wink to Jane with the supporting documents, the central one, which is the kind of fairy tale, the tale of you and McGonagall,
right,
that I tried to write in the style of, I absorbed Scott's folk tales and then tried to do that. But the putative author in the book is Jane Hyatt Stemple, which is Jane's real name.
Right.
Well, so Jane Yolen was her real name too, but Stemple was her
married name.
Married name, and
right.
Hyatt was part of the family background.
Oh, that's so cool.
It's a little wink to her.
So the characters, okay, Angus, is he a characteristic of any of you a little bit? And then I think of Alex, is there anybody you based it maybe on your own children or any kids? Because, with doing so much what you do in seeing kids in schools, do you pick up little pieces that you put together to make a character?
Oh, yeah. There are characters that are based strictly on one specific person. But there's others, what I call the kind of portmanteau, which is a word Lewis Carroll used for the words he made up and putting two words together, where I assemble them from bits and pieces of other people. As to Angus, the truth is I have a slight OCD strand. And my life is, with all the travel that I do for speaking and trying to run the audiobook company and my writing career, and sometimes it feels like everything's flying in all these different directions. So the OCD is a way of keeping that kind of under control.
Okay.
Making me feel like there's something that I have control of. Just writing down, what hours I work each day. So there's a little bit of that, and I've tried to tame my temper, but Angus's eruptions, which I love reading out loud.
Yeah. Oh, I bet.
They're
Yeah.
And I had to be careful so I don't get in too much trouble here. But let's say my wife, when I wrote the first short story, And there's a point when Angus and Jamie have this kind of slob war, where he's trying to clean up and she's making things. When I wrote the first draft of that, my wife said, "This is too tame," and gave me a lot of tips on sloppiness. That's all I'm going to say.
Oh, that's so great. So, outlining, knowing that this novel is kind of an epistolary novel because it's told in many different forms. It's text messages, it's diaries, it's a journal. You have the documents in here, and we don't want to give too much away, but you have a lot of different parts. Is this the kind of that you fit the pieces together, and with all your other work, do you outline, or is it something that you're writing and you let it surprise you, as it surprised us as the reader?
Having done, this was my 105th book.
Yeah, I was wondering how many. I knew it was over 100.
And
right.
I think at this point I've written books in almost every way you can do it.
Okay.
Early in my career, I was doing some work for packagers who hire you to write a book that they come up with a concept for. And to get those first contracts, I had to outline. Now, I'd been writing by the seat of my pants before that. And I thought, doing a synopsis, like a tight 10-page single-spaced synopsis for a book is going to make the writing of it very boring. What I discovered was that I always got where I said I was going to go, but I never got there the way I said I was going to do it.
Okay.
But the outline, having a place to aim at, made it so that I stopped having the problem where I got halfway through and didn't know what to do. I had in my files a number of half-finished novels. Once I started outlining, that stopped. Now I outline often, and often throw the outline away.
Okay.
If something picks up and draws me through. I also work on what I call the ever-expanding outline. So I may have an outline that will be very front-heavy, where I'm explaining the world to myself, the world of the characters, who the characters are, what their basic conflicts will be. And then after that, it'll be, I might spend 3 pages on the first chapter, 2 pages on the second chapter. Then the next page might be chapters 3 through 5. And then basically it says, and then a lot of cool stuff happens.
Yeah, right.
To the end. Yeah. And what I'll do is maybe write the first 30, 40 pages. Then I go back and chop those off the outline and expand the outline that's left and fill it in.
So this novel, though, especially with having all the different elements that you use, whether it's diaries, journals, text messages, notes, whatever it is, was that fun writing those?
Oh, it was. What I've been saying to my editor is these books are half written and half assembled.
Right, because they are
I do these
assembled.
documents,
Sure.
And I have a corkboard next to my desk, and I do an index card, and I do this with multiple books, but for this, I do an index card for each diary entry and each document.
Right.
And I have them all tacked up to the corkboard. And then there are days when I realize I got to move stuff around, and that lets me spend half an hour just rearranging the index card, so I feel like I'm working.
Yeah.
And my editor did the most brilliant thing when I went in for an editorial meeting. And my writer friends have all been jealous because usually you don't get this much kind of hands-on attention with the editor. We took the manuscript into a big conference room with a long, long table, and we laid it out, diary entry, document, diary entry, document, diary entry, document. And then we went around the table and she said, I know what we're going to do. And she pushed each document up by about 3 inches. So we could actually stand at the end of the table and look around and see the flow of the book all the way around.
Cool.
It took two times around to do the whole book. But then we go through and say, okay, we've got too many diary entries here. We need some documents to break it up. Too many documents here. We need a diary entry. So sometimes I just shift things around. Sometimes I have to go back and write a new document, a new diary entry to keep the flow of diary, document working the right way.
Yeah. Oh, no, because it is so much fun. And I love reading books in this format with all the different elements that go together to tell story. I think it's really cool. So I want to know what kind of research you did. You mentioned some of, studying some folklore and fairy tales and that sort of from Scottish heritage. But any other research you did to get Angus's character down, besides working on your excellent Scottish accent there?
The research for these books is, I think, surprising in how many different ways it goes.
Okay.
Because each of the documents tends to lead to different avenues of research. So, for example, one of the documents is a transcript of a police call. I needed to look up format for that.
Sure.
One of the documents, and I think this is one where we lost a lot of it, but it was about haggis.
Oh.
And I did a lot of research on haggis.
Haggis can be really good or really
And then there was the research on William McGonagall and his poetry.
Sure.
So the research, it's not just on, of course I intensely researched Brownies and intensely researched Scots folklore to bring what other aspects I wrote in. But, and without trying to do too many spoilers, when Angus gets to America, it occurred to me that the Enchanted Realm, which is where the creatures of myth and folklore live, that would happen in America too. So then I began researching North American, Native American folklore, because that was very tricky, because there's always, you want to be careful and respectful of other cultures. Mm-hmm. But I also thought it would be disrespectful to pretend that folklore didn't exist here. So I had to do very intense research on what the Native Americans in the Connecticut area believed in, and brought in this character, these two characters.
Right.
So yeah, the research led into lots of fantasy material and folklore material, but also lots of real world stuff, because those documents had to reflect the real world.
And that's so interesting in writing a book like this. That must be, it's sort of hard to stop when you're doing that. So, it's like, now I got to sit down and write this thing. So, so knowing that this is your 105th, all the books that you've written, does it ever change for you from that first novel you published with your wife back in '78, and thinking going forward to now, does it, knowing that putting that baby out in the world, does that change? Is there still little nerves in there knowing that book is out in the world? Or has it changed for you over the years, and knowing that you've got this, is there more assurance and you feel more confidence and that sort of thing than you did?
Well, you always worry about, is it going to play?
Right, sure.
Is it going to find its audience? Because all kinds of things affect how a book finds its audience. Mm-hmm. Two of the books, and then, you said that I'm known for my humor, and that's what I think is one of my strong points. But two of the funniest books that I think, personally, I think I ever wrote, pretty much tanked.
Yeah,
wrong cover, wrong title. So you always, you don't know if you have the complete formula correct.
Or the planets aren't aligned.
Or the planets aren't aligned.
Right,
yes.
right,
And
sure.
my assistant is also an astrologer, and he's always saying, Mercury's in retrograde. I finally said, Mike, I don't want to hear Mercury's in retrograde one more time.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, there's nervousness about that.
Yeah.
I have to say, this particular publishing experience is one of my favorites, because Random House worked so assiduously to get the cover right. We went through 2 different artists and so many different designs to get the cover right. Yeah. And then, the cover. Do we have it?
Yeah, right here.
He's got this big soccer ball rolling after him.
Right.
Well, the first version of that cover, there was a big cat chasing him.
Oh.
Who's Bubbles the cat.
Right, the cat. He's a character, a great character in the book.
Yes. And he says, Bubbles, what kind of name is that for a cat? He should be called Lucifer or Bloodfang Reddyclaw. But they decided it looked too scary, and they still wanted Angus jumping on the frame.
Yeah.
So they had the artist redo it with a soccer ball instead. And I said, but there's no soccer ball in the story.
Yeah.
So I went in and wrote a whole diary scene where...
Oh, you did? You changed it?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Yeah.
And then they did, and people don't even see this in the bookstore, but they paid such attention to detail. I love this. They sent me 4 or 5 possible designs for the diary format of the book.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I just love this so much. But it's a hidden little bonus thing unless you happen to take the
Well, and you got to
jacket.
tell, I'm sure you tell kids that when you talk to them.
Oh, yeah.
Well. Yeah, which they love that kind of stuff, yeah. So you were just on the Illinois Reading Conference we were talking about, and you participated in an authors readers theater that's been going on for quite a while. With, I think, Avi and Sarah Weeks are 2 of the founding members, but you joined Augusta Scattergood and you did a performance. Yeah. Tell us what it's like when you get up there and you basically are reading, but you're performing, a book and to an audience. So what is that like? And did you perform any of A Diary of a Mad Brownie?
I did not.
Okay,
because of the very nature, because we have 4 people reading,
right,
and it needs to be split between them. So Diary of a Mad Brownie, because of the diary format and the documents,
that would have made it
didn't adapt well. Because what people don't realize when we do the Authors Readers Theater is that we're not reading the book exactly as it's written. We spend hours transforming it into a Readers Theater format that lets all 4 people participate kind of equally. And we spent 2 full days rehearsing for that and rewrite the pieces significantly in that process.
Right.
So it's not just reading the book that was written. There's a lot of work that goes into those scripts. I love performance. That's why I started the audiobook company.
Right.
And
well, I want to know more about your Full Cast Audio company, and because you are a natural, obviously, it lets that inner thespian come out for you. But doing art, authors reader theater, and also this, it must be fun just to get that the book out there in an audible way and a performance way.
I write to be read aloud.
Okay.
And because I was an elementary school teacher.
Right.
And I read incessantly to my kids, my own personal kids, and I read to my classroom kids. I love reading aloud. And one of the reasons I read my books aloud as I work on them is to look for the spots where the tongue might tangle or the tang might tungle.
Right.
You want the text to flow.
Yeah.
And you look for places where the child's interest might flag. So performing books is to me just a joy. I've been reading aloud I became a dad very young, so I've been reading aloud for 45 years now.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things I love most in the world. And shaping a text and using some actors' tools and just having fun with it brings it to life.
Well, those full cast audio recordings you've done are absolutely brilliant. They are so wonderful.
Thank you.
I don't think there's any other way in just an audio format you can make a book come alive as much as that way. It's just so cool. So you mentioned being an elementary teacher, teaching what, second and fourth grade?
Second. I started at second, moved to fourth grade. I loved second, but I got to fourth grade and I was home because the kids and I were on the same emotional level.
Yeah, so
which is why I wrote for that grade level, because that's where I live emotionally.
So obviously that experience informed your writing, at a young age, right? So that's
Monsters Ring, which is the first of the Magic Shop books,
right.
and it's been in print for 32 years now.
Yeah.
The two main characters are kids I had in my classroom.
Right.
I modeled them directly. We were talking about where characters come from. They were modeled directly on two kids I had in my classroom.
Yeah. So talking about, all the different genres you've written, it's science fiction, fantasy, you've done the Shakespeare retellings and all that. Is there one you like to write about, or is it kind of the fantasy kind of stuff like that?
Fantasy is probably more and more claimed to my heart. Okay. It was where I kind of started with Sarah's Unicorn, The Foolish Giant.
All right.
I like writing science fiction. I love science fiction. I've drifted more and more toward fantasy. I can't say exactly why, but I've drifted more and more toward fantasy as the years have gone on.
Okay. And you've written a few Amber Brown books, and Paula Danziger was just one of my all-time favorite authors. So what is it like picking up the Amber Brown books from her and writing a couple of those?
Well, let's start with this. There was only one Paula Danziger.
That's right.
She was one of the biggest personalities,
oh my
biggest
gosh,
hearts in all of children's literature.
Yeah.
But Paula was my best friend. And she was also, Elizabeth Levy and I wrote these Amber Brown books together because Liz was also Paula's best friend. We used to refer to each other as the other best friend. But in 1992, Paula and I were both stuck on books we were working on. And we were on the phone complaining to each other about it. And we were mostly in our own way. You get to be kind of a perfectionist and worry about matching what you've done before and forgetting that it didn't come out right the first time and you wrote 10 drafts. So we made a pact. We said, we're going to call each other tomorrow and have 3 new pages. And who does not have 3 pages suffers unendurable shame.
Oh.
So we started that in 92, and she was working on the first Amber Brown book, and I was working on Goblins in the Castle. And it was so effective that we continued doing that literally for the rest of her life. So I heard every word of every Amber Brown before it ever went to her editor. So I knew Amber's voice pretty well. In fact, at one point, Paula liked to tell a story that she read passages to me. I said, Paula, that doesn't sound like Amber. Amber doesn't whine. You whine, but Amber doesn't whine. That was Paula saying that. Quoting myself back to me.
No. All right.
So after her death, the family and publisher wanted to relaunch the series. I think it was probably not quite close to 10 years after her death. Mm-hmm. And they came to Liz first because Liz had the same the same agent as Paula. Right. They said, would you be interested in doing this? And Liz called me and she said, what do you think about this? I'm not sure about doing it. And she said, would you do it? I said, I'm not sure about doing it. She said, what if we did it together?
That's cool.
And because we were both very concerned about not being seen as taking advantage of our friendship with Paula. And I can't say exactly why. But I know for both of us, it seemed to take the sting out of that possibility by doing it together. Doing it more as a tribute between the two of us.
Right.
And Liz had also heard most of Amber Brown. So she knew the voice very well. So the collaboration, we worked mostly in Liz's kitchen.
Oh, that's good.
And it was kind of almost like a 3-way thing because it was always the sense that
Paula was there at the table too. Yeah.
And we'd say, oh, Paula would laugh at this. Oh, Paula would be so pissed that she wasn't here to do this with us. But it was always trying to be true to the character and maintain Paula's voice, but take it where we thought she was going. Because she'd really set up what was going to happen next in the series.
Yeah. Oh, she was just a remarkable, oh my gosh, bigger than life.
I adored her.
Yeah. So what is your earliest recollection of wanting to be a writer? And do you remember that first piece you wrote? Whatever story, whatever, when you were young? And what was it about? And tell us a little bit about that.
I was in 6th grade. And our teacher, Mrs. Crandall, had us writing all year long, which was unusual at that time. Mm-hmm. She was working her way whole language, which is the way the real teachers teach. Last time around it was clubbed to death like a baby harp seal, but teachers are still doing when they know that it's what works. Mm-hmm. And she had us write all year long, which was unusual. And the only way you learn to write is by writing. But she always had us write to prompts. And I did not do well at that.
Oh, okay.
And I remember my failures, because remember the things we did bad better than things we do well. Every writer I know can quote their bad reviews. Yeah. So I can tell you what I did wrong 50-some years ago in her classroom. She played music. You're supposed to write about how it made us feel. She played Finlandia. I can still remember the piece.
Finlandia, oh, interesting choice.
Yes. But I was a little OCD even then. She read them out loud, and I remember this vividly. One kid wrote, "The music makes me feel like a king marching his army up the hill." And another kid wrote, "The music makes me feel like an eagle soaring over the countryside." And she got to mine and it said, "The music's getting louder. Now it's going kind of faster. It's slowing down again." It was like the poster child for anal retentive. Another time she gave us a choice, which is better, writing about rage or my thumb. I was trying to be creative, which is often a mistake in 6th grade. And I knew rage means a great anger. But I knew it also meant something suddenly very popular. It's all the rage. It's new. Sure. It's not us. No, it's hot. It's hip. It's here. It's us. So I thought, what becomes a rage? What becomes suddenly faddish? What music does. I love music, but didn't know enough about it to write about it. Clothing does, but I was totally hopeless at clothing. One reason I'm married is to have somebody check my wardrobe in the morning. I come out of the bedroom, my wife says, "That shirt, those pants, go back and try again." Yeah. Food is my favorite thing. Yeah. And I had already started to cook at that age, so I thought, okay. Because as a child we have delusions of grandeur, as opposed to when you grow up and have delusions of competence. Mm-hmm. I thought, I got to make a recipe, but I couldn't go and try anything in the oven, so I made up a recipe for fruit salad, called it Rage, handed it in, and she said, the poor woman was baffled. She said, "You didn't get it. Try the other one." My thumb. I was too dumb and silly to realize that my thumb is a nonfiction topic. Everybody else was writing an essay about their thumb, how they used it. I couldn't live without it. I wrote an adventure story. This thumb got lost. This thumb went looking for it.
That's
in
great.
Which you can see the seeds of my career.
Of course.
But at the end of the year, that didn't go over well with her.
Yeah.
At the end of the year, she did something really wonderful. She said, "We're going to write a short story. You've got, I can't remember, it was 3 or 4 weeks to work on it. We're going to read them all out loud," but she didn't say what it had to be about. It had to come from inside. Right. Now, what I did do, it's what you do when you start out. You model the writing you like. I did took the basic idea of Sheila Burnford's The Incredible Journey. Wonderful book, been filmed twice. Right. That's 2 dogs and a cat. Mm. I one-upped her. I went metaphorical. There was a lion and a lamb that had been trained by this pet farm that provided animals for movies, and they were lost in the wilderness, had to make their way back to the movie training animal farm together. Journey across the wilderness with a lion and a lamb. And I loved what I wrote. It was the first time I thought, I could do this. Now, I had changed my mind off and on as a kid, but by the time I was 15 or 16, I knew what I wanted to write. So, tell us what you're working on now, and tell us we're going to see Angus again, right? Okay, all right. Well, the setup for this particular series is, it is the Enchanted Files. They are diaries, but they are diaries of different beings or creatures. Mm. So the second one is the Diary of a Runaway Griffin. Okay. And I'm working now on the Diary of a Terrible Troll. So I'm trying to work out a way for Angus to possibly make a guest appearance in this. Good. But it is not going to be Angus's story. Sure. Each book is about a different character. It's a little like the Magic Shop books that I write, where every book is about a different character and is a different adventure. The common thread is the Magic Shop. The common thread here is the Enchanted Realm and the documents and the diary format. Right. But each creature or being from the Enchanted Realm has a different story to tell. Yeah. Oh, great. Bruce, thank you so much. And congratulations on Diary of a Mad Brownie. And we can't wait for the next. It was a total pleasure to do this. Thank you. Yeah. What a great conversation with Bruce Coville. He makes every book come alive. And it's his new book of the Enchanted Files. It's called
Diary of a Mad Brownie. You've got to read this one. Thanks for joining me on Authors Revealed.